comment to us. First, Jamie Clark.
Inclusion is not about bringing people into what already exists. It is about making a new space, a better space for everyone. Educators, superintendent, and school board officials who have been voted in by their constituents. I, Jamie Clark, mother to Blake and Parker Clark, stand here before you today with the hopes and dreams that School District 301 will rise to meet our students where they're at, specifically by opening a blended kindergarten classroom, something that does not currently exist in our district. Therefore, my son is being sent to an environment 60 minutes away, a foreign environment for him, a self-contained special ed classroom that offers less of the things that my son needs for his social disorder, autism. Therefore, I require District 301 to do better. You see, we live in a highly ranked district for our neurotypical developing students, but if you check greatschools.org, you will see that we are failing our special education population, evidenced by the reviews themselves being less than favorable. This makes our district less desirable for parents and children with special needs. If you don't know this, I encourage you to visit greatschools.org and read the reviews for yourself. And then I ask you, is that really the reputation that we want or that we are willing to settle with? Does this already vulnerable group have to continue to be invisible when all they want is to be seen, heard, and accepted like everybody else? There are many children with special needs in our district, children with IEPs and 504 accommodations, and greatschools.org shows us that we aren't making the grade. We demand our teachers to differentiate their learning and dismantle the idea of one size fits all. But as a district, we too must consider why this population is not closing the achievement gap. The system is broken and we need systematic change, not just for my son Blake, but for all the families who struggle to find adequate placement for their children. After speaking at the school board meeting 2 weeks ago about inclusion, I can't begin to tell you the countless parents and teachers who reached out to me expressing their support. The outpouring of love for this cause did not just come from special needs parents, but also parents of neurotypical children and teachers that thanked me for speaking out. I was thankful and pleasantly surprised by the calls from the parents in Blake's blended preschool classroom who consider themselves friends of my son. They wanted to see him back in school with them next year. I can't express the joy that brought to me because I know how sweet my little boy is, and to see other children appreciate and understand his differences is what education is all about. One of the biggest reasons for selecting to have a blended early education classroom program is to integrate children before they see differences and to offer peer modeling for children who need it. These children then create strong bonds, and many of the children in the self-contained classroom are sent away from their home school, their peers, the familiar faces, and the teachers, their safe place to start kindergarten in their community. The idea of being bussed away from all that a child knows seems counterproductive to me when we are currently in a model that helps them to flourish versus the possibility of regression. They need their typical peers to include them and to play with them at recess and in the classroom because they struggle with speech and social skills. School is the #1 place to improve social skills, especially when you consider my son Blake and those like him spend 24 hours a week outside of school on additional therapy because we know that early intervention is key. But these are one-on-one hours, and so school is the only outlet to have consistent peer interaction. My son is not the only one who wins with inclusion. Everyone wins with inclusion. This is how students learn to be empathetic and compassionate to children that are different than themselves. Inclusion takes more than students reading it in a book. They see by learning. They see by experiencing. They learn when they actually get the opportunity to put it in action. Blake longs to be included, and the biggest mistake would be to not include a child because all you see is a disability and not the holistic child and what he is actually able to do when given the opportunity and support to do so. And by not doing so, you limit his potential as a human. I think about the countless families that will be coming into our community in the upcoming years. We need to stop treating our district like a farming town and start realizing that they are building hundreds of new homes in our community. Our neighborhood alone, which houses Country Trails, is slated for 925 houses. This is 400 more homes than we currently have in our community, which means we'll be countless new kids coming over the next few years. That is roughly $13 million in tax dollars every year from our neighborhood alone. We know our 4 elementary schools are already bursting at the seams, or we'd have a classroom in our district for these children. And with the prevalence of autism being 1 in 54, as the latest CDC statistics that were published on March 27th of this year, I should not have to stand in front of you today imploring the district to create a classroom that supports my son's needs, or to give him a fighting chance in a gen ed classroom with supports, nor should I have to be the one talking about the importance of inclusion. We are all stakeholders in District 301, but this kind of advocacy should be coming from you, the educators and the decision makers. Yet every single day, another mom calls me in our district asking me to be the voice for her child as I stand before you today fighting for mine. I knew that there would be a day when I would need to realize that what I'm advocating for is not just mere accommodations, but instead I am advocating for someone's basic human rights. Today, that advocacy is for Blake Clark and those like him who deserve to be included, and the district doesn't have anything that fits his true needs because we have only been given one option, an option that takes away more opportunities from him than what he currently has now. And so I will say it again, inclusion is not bringing people into what already exists. It is making a new space, a better space for everyone. Today, I stand with Blake Clark, and I hope the district is wise enough to make some change.
Thank you, Jamie. Next, Mary Jane Battaglia.
Oh, I took all the minutes.
If you want to say something, go ahead. Mary Jane. And Anthony.
I'll say this. I think it's disgraceful how a little boy is being evicted from a school where he should be. And it's breaking our hearts, and it's putting so much stress on our family. You should all be ashamed of yourselves. That's what I have to say.
Anthony Battaglia.
Lived here about 32 years now. Started in St. Charles, Illinois. Brought our family here. Looked for places that we can move our family. For better housing, for safer community, for our children to learn better and to be safer. Recently we moved into Highland Woods. My daughter also moved out of Chicago area, came all the way here to Highland Woods to grow a family, start a family. She started a family here. We pay an exorbitant amount of taxes that 87% go to schooling. And I am totally disappointed that we are lacking any education that St. Charles, Lombard, or even Huntley, which is another community further west than here, has. And that's for children with extra needs. So I also back my daughter and state that, you know, if you want people to move in here, if you want this development to happen, I see a lot of new developments coming in. I see a lot of new builders coming in here. Should we tell them that there's no education for children with needs, with special needs? And see how many will move in here. You need to, you're educators, you need to build a formation, a foundation for children to be able to grow in and to learn in. And we do not have that at this point. And I'm sorry to say I'm disappointed.
And Schleicher.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Jen Schleicher, and I'm a parent at Country Trails. Currently, about 1 in 20 children have some kind of disability. That gives 19 kids the daily opportunity to learn about diversity, collaboration, and inclusion. The fact that this district and the administrators in charge are not jumping at this opportunity completely blows my mind. If you are a parent of a kid without special needs, they are missing out too. Why is it that a child with disabilities spends hours every day being taught how to interact with others, but we don't spend time teaching those without disabilities how to interact with them? People fear the unknown and the unfamiliar. Fear leads to prejudice, mistreatment, inequality, and bullying. This is not my opinion, this is a fact. And the fact that I am forced to stand here and point out the injustices being carried out onto many of our community's special needs children disgusts me. And to those in this room and listening remotely, it should disgust you too. Anyone who sits back while knowing that this is happening should be ashamed. And I encourage the board to dig much deeper into this because it is happening to many families in our district. If you want to learn a new language, what's the best way to do it? To become truly fluent, you have to immerse yourself in it, right? How is inclusion any different? Kids listen to social stories about diversity in school, about inclusion and bullying, but that is much different than actually living it every day. Adults, like everyone in this room, have to take online training and seminars at their jobs to talk about the importance of diversity and acceptance. Some still don't get it. Maybe it's because they were never exposed to it growing up. Everyone, right now, do me a favor, close your eyes for a second. Imagine a situation where a student was being sent to a different school, away from his friends, away from their family and community, against the parents' wishes because they were different. Imagine the parents fighting for their child to be given the opportunity to play with their friends, develop relationships, and just fit in. Imagine the parents and child being given reasons like, the other school's more equipped for your situation, or we just think they're better off. As special needs parents, we are all told that we are part of a team and part of the decision, but it has honestly never felt like it. Now, imagine that the reason the family was given was their skin color, or sexual orientation, or gender. Raise your hand if this would outrage you. I really thought that we were past this. I thought this was a fight that was already won. Neurodiversity is no different than any of the other diversity covered on the daily news. To exclude many of these children in the district because their brain works a little different than yours is completely unacceptable. Inclusion is a right, not a privilege for a select few. We will know that inclusive education has really become embedded in our culture when the term is obsolete. Thank you.
Next, we have Kimberly Gravitt.
Good evening. My name is Kimberly Gravitt, and I'm a special education teacher at Prairie View, and I'm also the vice president of our teachers union. I'm speaking to you tonight about special education, which is one of our most vulnerable population. I ask you to please look at all aspects when deciding what the plan is as we head back into school, such as meeting IEP minutes effectively, which was very difficult during remote learning, as well as student placement. Myself and others would be very happy to sit down with you and have a discussion so we can work collaboratively to come to a best outcome for these students. I hope to hear from you all. Thank you so much.
Dave Chapman.
Good evening, District 301 Board of Education members. My name is Dave Chapman, and I'm an 8th grade social studies teacher and president of the Teachers Union. Thank you for all your time on preparing to reopen schools in a few weeks. I know this is a difficult and challenging time for everyone involved. The union has been discussing with the administration return to school plans, some of which I'm sure will be shared with you tonight. The union continues to reiterate that safety should be a driving factor in decisions made. We have a great and hardworking educators in this district who have and will continue to meet the needs of their students no matter the platform. Please feel free to reach out to me with any questions about returning to school to better understand the perspective of our educators. Thank you for your time.
All right, we received some public comment via email. This time we'll read those. You want to start, Laura? All right.
I've had 2 people text me that they can't hear anybody but the microphone there, so
We haven't sent
agreeing.
anything yet.
Just the people up front, they said they couldn't hear too, so hopefully we'll do our best.
All right.
Okay. Will there be any orientation to acclimate students so they know what to expect when school starts on August 31st, regardless how they return to school? Thank you, Stacy and Bob Maramamba. Sorry. Hello, Pam. I am sure this someone has commented on this, but I was wondering if the board had considered putting kindergarten and first graders as a priority to be in person and spread out in the building, hire more teachers, if they decide to go all remote. I am concerned that my kindergartner will not learn to read and write as well as at home and maybe make him behind for the rest of his school career. Thank you for your time and good luck. Despina Carras. Dear 301 board members, My name is Kelsey Hendry, and I have been teaching first grade in this district since 2014. I didn't always want to be a teacher growing up, but life has led me here, and I absolutely love my job. I have my master's in literacy and my reading specialist endorsement. Both degrees I obtained so I could increase my expertise on how to help 6-year-olds learn to read. My absolute favorite part of every day is when I get to meet with my small groups for guided reading. I try to have 2 to 6 kids in a group where we just pause the world around us and explore books. We question authors' purposes, create character analysis charts, and make predictions at every turn of the page. We work on skills that build the foundation of strong readers. These small group times are when I get to know my students best because they aren't competing with 25 other children in their thoughts and ideas to be heard. If we go back to school and face-to-face, I strongly plead the district to find funds to create or purchase some type of plexiglass contraption so that teachers can still continue to use this small group time effectively. Giving up our small group time would be extremely detrimental to our littlest learners who need this time to work on so many skills. One of my biggest beliefs as an educator is children learn to love reading when they are in an environment that encourages and supports their exploration of reading. Because of this, I have over 6,000 books in my classroom. I have teacher read-alouds, 2 student libraries, and 2 bookshelves of my own guided reading book sets, all brought with my own money because I know how important books are. The handful of districts who are returning to school are requiring teachers to empty out their classrooms of all non-district purchases, which includes books. Sure, we have electronic books that the kids can access, but is that really building up the children's ability to read? One of the first skills we teach when learning to read is directionality. Directionality is reading words left to right, and reading top of the left page to bottom of the left page, and then over to the top of the right page. How do you teach children that very basic and beginning skill when they can't even hold a book? If we go back face to face, my second request is that the district research and provide a way for our books to stay in our classroom, at least in the lower elementary where our kids are learning to read. A few suggestions are a pair of germ gloves for each student to hold, touch books, and then a few extra plexiglass contraptions that kids can put up on their desks where their arms and books can go behind the glass. The kids could wipe the glass down after they are done with the book. The germ gloves would then stay with each student for the year. Teachers have a lot of hurt from the community over remote learning. I'm not sure where all this hatred is coming from because let me tell you, prepping remote learning for first graders is not easy. I normally only work 50 hours at school during the week and 10 hours on the weekend. I arrive at school every day by 6:40 and leave by 5, even as a 6th-year teacher. When remote learning was sprung on us, I was putting in 60 to 70-hour work weeks consistently with a 3-year-old and baby at home. I was prepping engaging and 6-year-old appropriate activities. I tried making the lessons purposeful. I recorded videos for every activity with directions and screencasts to show the kids what to click and where to click. I did weekly video check-ins, whole group, and each day did a few small check-ins on Google Meet. I met with students ranging from 9 in the morning to 6 at night because I know not every student could meet me at the assigned time slot I wanted to give. Remote learning wasn't perfect, and there were many learning curves teachers had to conquer. But many of us put everything we had into providing the kids some type of education while schools could not open. Currently, the district's plan is to have me teach some kids 4 days a week, a day of remote, 2 groups of kids 2 days a week, and 2 days of remote, and 1 group of students full remote. That is 4 different class groups of students. I know we're being told they'll be learning the same, but really, to accomplish teaching 4 groups of students and providing each group an equitable education, realistically speaking, teachers will be putting in 80 to 100-hour work weeks. Trust me when I say I have 3 degrees and only making $50,000 while having 2 little kids at home is a hard pill to swallow when I look at working 80 hours a week. I want to teach every child who I am giving, but I also want to be the best teacher I can be. My request to the district is that you honor the research, make our class sizes smaller for this year, 12 to 15 kids, and please, please give students who choose remote learning their own separate teacher. That way, that group of children can receive every bit of instruction, social emotional support, and everything in between they need. Please do this for the children and so that our teachers are not stretched to their limits. Thank you for your time. Kelsey Hendry. (301) admin and school board members. Everyone has their own opinions on how schools should open and what would be best for their families. But we need to look at the safest option for the whole 301 community. A safe and equitable plan for all is what is needed during this unprecedented time. We need to stop acting like sending our kids back to school is going to be normal. There will be nothing normal about it. I know the school board and district administrators have tirelessly been trying to put together a plan that appeases everyone, and unfortunately in the end it will probably backfire because you can never please everyone. When you try to simultaneously offer so many different options to fit the needs of everyone in the community, you end up with a mediocre plan at best. I believe one plan should be focused on so it can be the most effective as possible under these unfortunate circumstances. There are too many community members, parents, and district leaders advocating for a return to school with no regard to the negative consequences of that choice. It's sad to see the lack of common sense towards safety being ignored. It is also sad to see the misinformation being spread about a virus that are still learning new things about daily. I am sure the pressure from politicians and parents telling you to open up schools is overwhelming. Everyone wants to get back to normal, but since when has this virus operated on our schedule? I am hopeful that a federal incentive for reopening school does not cloud your ability to make the safest decision for all. The safest decision is started the school year with a full remote learning plan, just like many area school districts have already decided, including U46, District 300, Barrington 220, Arlington Heights District 25, Huntley 158, among others. U46 Superintendent Tony Standard states, I cannot accept the loss of life. We will remain predominantly distance learning through the first quarter. District 300 will start with fully remote learning due to a rise in COVID-19 cases in King County. I think this is the safest way for us to approach this right now, said Fred Hyde, Superintendent of District 300. Arlington Heights Elementary District 25 Superintendent Lori Bine defended her decision to start the school year remotely after originally planning for in-person learning, over the objection of nearly half the parents in a survey who wanted a full return to classrooms. I do have the responsibility, however, to answer all employees' questions with full honesty and transparency, and as I find areas where I can't do that and feel good about the answer. I have the responsibility to face that the answers are not yet fully formed. It is apparent there are still so many unanswered questions. Please be honest and own up to that, and don't put students and staff in harm's way because you don't know. We are in the middle of a global pandemic that has already taken 150,000 lives so far. No one knows. I am begging you to please err on the side of caution when the health of our student community is at stake. Thank you, Carissa LaFleur.
This is a public comment from Kelly McKay. Hello, Pam and Dr. Stern. In light of the upcoming school board meeting tonight, I'd like to reiterate my hope for the performing arts continue this school year. My hope is that the district will work with the music directors at all the schools in 301 to continue the arts in whatever way is feasible and safe. Music is playing, singing, and performing, yes, but it is also an avenue to learn about humanity. To engage the student beyond the playing and singing is a fundamental at any level. Our music directors teach music through discussion, listening, reflecting, composing, and comparing music through the ages. The music directors are creative, outside-the-box thinkers, and it is my experience that some music is better than no music, singing over Zoom, playing an instrument over Google Meet, or learning the historical context of a musical piece keeps the students engaged and communicating with their music director. It is not the best learning environment, but is doable and feasible one. Many parents of the district students have reached out to me to express their genuine thanks for the work that all the music directors did during the spring 2020 e-learning. They appreciate all the online extra work our music directors did to maintain a pulse on the students, their emotional well-being, as well as their musical skills. Thank you for your consideration. Kelly McKay. Next one is from Vicki Kawaja. Hi, Pam. For parents that requested 4-day in-person instruction for their children, does the district have a target date to inform the parents if their children will be enrolled in the 4-day program? Also, if there are multiple children in the family, if one child gets into a 4-day, do all the children in that family? We personally have children at each level, high school, middle, and elementary, and are anxiously awaiting to know how many days our children will be in school versus remote learning at home. Kind regards. Next one is from Allison Morris. Hi, Pam. I'd like to have more thought put toward the A-B split in-person and e-learning plan with the deep cleaning schedule happening on weekends and Wednesdays. The current plan on Monday, Thursday, and Tuesday, Friday split exposes the students with names beginning with M to Z to the unclean school building. Has there been any thoughts put to this? This doesn't seem to be the best solution. Thank you. The next one is a public comment that was missed on July 20th, but we did inform the submitter that we would read it tonight. It's from Mr. Lloyd Miller. Good afternoon. I will be watching the remote session of tonight's school board meeting, but I have some questions that I would like answered. 1, why is it that like every other month, the students have a half a day followed by a full day off for Teacher Institute days? This is extremely difficult for many parents, many families who now have their kids for 2 days during the week. I've inquired with other school districts and none of them have days off as 301. What is happening with these half days and Teacher Institute days there that cannot happen at another time? Number 2, you stated that Wednesdays every week will be the remote learning for deep cleaning of the schools. That is going to happen. What is going to happen on those Wednesdays that cannot happen between the hours of 5 p.m. and 7 a.m. the next day? This is yet again another day that working parents have to be the teachers when we have jobs in the school of our own to tend to. Number 3, you are discussing moving the start date back to the end of August. Why? Our children are already missing out on so much class time with other half days, Teacher Institute days. Now you want them to miss out another additional 2 to 3 additional weeks of class time. We understand the school district has certain mandates from the state when it comes to COVID-19. The school board needs to realize that every day off and every half day, every delay in the school year puts a tremendous amount of pressure and stress on the tax-paying families of the district. Many of us do not have options to watch our children when they're not in school. Next one is from Jeff. Why are the board meetings not video streamed and only the agenda is shown, especially if this is something you want your teachers to be doing when school begins? The longer it takes to make a decision, the more time that is wasted for teachers who could be preparing for how they will be delivering their lessons. Parents still are not able to make plans for childcare with so much unknown. At this point, the district does not seem like it will be prepared to reopen with all safety measures and kinks worked out. If we cannot keep Major League Baseball teams safe, even with tons of precautions, how are we going to keep teachers, school staff, and students safe with basically no precautions? It would be much easier to start out all remote so that when we do return to in-person, all safety measures can be successfully put in place and daily schedules made so this is not disorganized chaos. Next one is from Julie Arnold. For the board meeting Monday, I'm fine with my question being part of a group request for cross-country information. Will PK and Central Middle School cross-country be competing this fall now that the IESA has reversed their position? If so, when will practices start?
Next, we have a comment from Michael LaFleur. 301 admin and school board members. Most of us agree that remote learning for the general population is not as good as in-person learning, but the measures we need to take to keep students and teachers safe in our schools this year would eliminate most, if not all, of what makes in-person learning so great. Collaborative group work? Nope. One-on-one conferences at the teacher's desk? Nope. Partner discussions? Nope. Active learning? You get the idea. Normal learning is not on the table this year, and asking teachers to teach in a hybrid model simultaneously with the students at home and the students sitting in front of them is unfair to all. I assume student and staff safety is your number one concern. Focus on a remote learning plan and make it the best it can be for all students. If we reopen our schools right now, we will be inviting COVID-19 into the classrooms along with our students. As Jeff Gregorich, a superintendent in Arizona, says, he had a teacher in his district die of COVID-19 this summer when she worked in a classroom with 2 other teachers for a virtual summer school program. All 3 wore masks, had temp checks, didn't share anything. Her brother got it and died. Her husband was hospitalized. The other 2 teachers were positive and had it bad for the next month. There were 3 responsible adults in an otherwise empty classroom, and they worked hard to protect each other. We still couldn't control it. That's what scares me. These kids could very easily catch the virus, spread it, and bring it back home. It's not safe. There's no way it can be safe. If you think anything else, I'm sorry, but it's fantasy. Kids will get sick or worse. Family members will die. Teachers will die. I'm sure you have had many sleepless nights over this decision, but I cannot imagine the guilt you would feel knowing you put your employees and students at risk if you chose to physically open the schools. I am sure you are aware that in the past couple of weeks of schools and camps opening, there have been numerous outbreaks of COVID-19 among school-age populations. There have also been more studies revealed that show how school-age kids spread the virus, as well as how children may carry high levels of the coronavirus, up to 100 times as much as adults. I believe the safest and most equitable plan is full remote learning for all. If you are still considering sending staff and students of 301 into the buildings, please consider the following. Number 1, you're sitting in a meeting limited to 15 people. How can you have schools open with hundreds of students and staff present? 2, you mentioned in the last board meeting that you didn't offer any sports camps or practices this summer for your athletes due to the liability involved. You mentioned the Lake Zurich sports camp outbreaks. These are mainly outdoor events with limited students. Are you really ready to open up your schools to all students? Are you still concerned with liability? Number 3, you should meet your employees' safety needs before you can expect them to be productive and effective with students. I would like the board and admin to take full responsibility if a hybrid model is chosen. When it fails, please do not project the failure of this plan onto the teachers, who had no say in the model chosen and can already predict the faults of it. It is unfair for teachers to take the verbal abuse from the parents who are most certainly going to call the start of school a failure, just like they did with spring e-learning. There were things mandated by the state that a teacher had no control over that contributed to its failure. Might I add, I saw no failure in the e-learning that was implemented in the spring. Number 4, if you do choose any model that has students going back into the buildings, I would like to ask all board members and administrators to sub at least 1 class each week so you can see what you are asking of your employees and students. Thank you. Next is a comment from Rebecca Franta. Hello, I would like to submit the following question and comments to be read during the public comment portion of the Central School District 301 board meeting on August 3rd. What is the district's criteria for determining when it is not safe to conduct in-person classes? As reported in the news, positive COVID cases continue to rise in Kane County, across the state, and across the U.S. The Kane County Chronicle reported on Friday, July 31st, that daily COVID-19 cases keep rising in Kane County, with 5 days of positivity increases. The IDPH reported on July 31st that Kane County is now at the warning level for new cases per 100,000 because we have passed the threshold criteria. When schools closed in March to prevent the spread of COVID-19, there were 405 new cases reported across the United States. According to the CDC, there were over 68,000 new cases reported on July 31st. As kids have started to return to activities such as summer camps, sports camps, and even in-person learning in a neighboring state, the results are that when children are gathering in groups, they are contracting the virus and testing positive for COVID-19. On July 31st, the CDC reported that over 250 children tested positive for COVID-19 at a summer camp in Georgia. According to the CDC, children between the ages of 6 and 10 had the highest rate of infection at 51%, followed by teens between the ages of 11 and 14 at 44%. This was the latest among several reports of children contracting the virus at summer camps, including 85 campers at a YMCA camp in Georgia and 82 children at a summer camp in Missouri. In July, 36 Lake Zurich High School students who were attending sports camps tested positive, and at the time, the health department warned that the number could be much higher, as the community awaited results of testing for many more individuals. At Greenfield Central Junior High School in Indiana this past week, a student who was attending the first day of in-person learning received a positive COVID-19 test result on the very first day of school. Many school districts in the area have decided that in-person classes are not safe at this time and will begin the year with remote learning, including District U46, which serves families in 11 communities, including Elgin, South Elgin, and Bartlett. School District 300, which serves 15 communities, including Hampshire, Pingree Grove, and Algonquin, and School District 158, which serves families in Huntley, Gilberts, and Lake in the Hills. Tony Sanders, the superintendent of School District U46, said the loss of a student or staff member as a result of the decision to reopen schools is unacceptable. Please consider the fact that remote learning is the only option at this time that will guarantee that not a single life is lost due to the school-related exposure of COVID-19 for students, staff, families, and community members. Thank you for considering this question and the information provided. Next is a comment from Marlianna Wozniak. Hello, Central District 301. I have 4 kids attending elementary school. When we filled out the survey for returning back to school, we chose that there's enough space to do it a 4-day option with every Wednesday remote learning. 2 of our older kids actually did pretty well with remote learning and were independent in getting their work done without much of our help. However, our younger 2 kids who have IEPs truly struggled and did not want to participate much with the video chats, and it made it very difficult for me as a mom to get them to want to speak with their teachers and helpers on the video chats. My 2 kids with IEPs not only needed to video chat with their main teachers, but also their speech therapist, social worker, and their special ed teachers. It was extremely difficult and overwhelming as a mom that I needed to be fully present when they had to do all of these video chats with their teachers/helpers. That is why we chose the 4-day option of in-person schooling, because I feel that my 2 younger kids especially will benefit in having their teachers teach them face-to-face, even if it means having to wear a mask. My question is, depending on what gets decided as far as returning to school, especially if the district decides possibly to do all-day remote learning, will kids who have IEPs be expected to follow the same schedule like non-IEP kids for the whole day, or even need to be fully present for live instruction? The district decides to start the year with all remote learning. Will the teachers be teaching remotely from home, or will they be at the school teaching the kids remotely? The reason why I'm asking is, if the teachers happen to be at the school, is it possible for kids with IEPs who get speech therapy, occupational therapy, and possibly help with math or reading, can they go to school in person to receive help with these areas? Thank you for your time. I think that concludes public comment. Before we go on to information items, I wanted to say something too, give some thanks and give some information. So I'd like to express my sincere gratitude for the hard work and support of the administration and staff for the tireless hours that they have dedicated to leading the district through this crisis. In response to the ongoing challenges, the district formed 8 committees to assist in gathering data and planning for the reopening of our schools. These committees include the Governance Committee, the Wellness Committee, the Post-Secondary Committee, the Instruction Committee, a Facilities Committee, along with the Facilities Subcommittee, the School Operations Committee, and the Special Education and English Learners Committee. Thank you to everyone who has dedicated your time in supporting these efforts. I would also like to thank our District 301 community and ensure everyone that the board hears and shares your thoughts and concerns. We appreciate your cooperation and continue to encourage constructive feedback. I am personally extremely proud to be part of the District 301 community, and I'm grateful for the collaborative efforts of the whole district. Over the past several months, our nation has experienced 2 crises. The collective responsibility of the board, the administration, and our educators has never been more prominent. It is that heightened awareness in this time of uncertainty that demands we identify new approaches, acknowledge setbacks, and embrace constructive discussions to develop and adapt to ever-changing circumstances. I want to assure the community that the health and safety of our administration, teachers, students, and families, in addition to getting the education of our students back on track, is our primary objective. While our goal remains in-person learning, the reality is that intermittent closures may be unavoidable. As a board member, taxpayer, and father from a two-income household, I appreciate the challenges that every family will need to confront and the uncertainty and frustration that this may cause. The plan for the 2020 to 2021 school year has required working through the comprehensive guidelines established by the state, ISBE, and IDPH, while also coordinating with the teachers and support staff to address the challenges of safely returning students to school. All recommendations will honor our local community, acknowledging that District 301 is separate and unique from the surrounding areas. With the support of our teachers, we are hoping to develop innovative instructional practices that will reduce and hopefully eliminate the learning loss experienced by all students, while acknowledging and working to meet the needs of our most vulnerable students. Educating our children takes on a whole new meaning during these unprecedented times, and it will require fiscal responsibility, flexibility, creativity, and embracing new opportunities. While at the present we cannot return to the way our classroom operated in the past, this can be an opportunity to develop skills and identify meaningful new ways to communicate and convey lessons. As we enter a school year unlike any before, I'm confident the administration, board, teachers, and staff can work together to seek opportunities to identify how to best serve the students and to meet these unique challenges. While in-person learning remains the goal, the board continues to support the establishment of flexible learning options that emphasizes face-to-face interaction and authentic and differentiated learning opportunities to help students stay connected to teachers and classmates. While there are no simple solutions, we are fortunate that District 301 has worked closely with the local and state government and health officials to adopt a transitional schedule that will provide both remote and blended learning opportunities. District 301 has always paved its own path towards success. It is our collective hope that the district will now set a new standard to meet the quality education and experience our community expects and deserves.
Schools are an important part of the infrastructure of a community, and they provide critical services to families. The CDC, the Illinois Department of Public Health, and the Illinois School Board understand the unique and critical role that schools play by enabling students to receive both academic instruction and support, as well as critical services. We have worked diligently to plan for and adhere to Part 3 transition joint guidance from the Illinois School Board and from the Illinois Department of Public Health. We're doing this for the return of school this fall. Part of being able to return to school this fall is to have proper PPE and disinfecting protocols in place. Director of Buildings and Grounds, Dan Holloway, is joining us tonight to outline what measures we have taken and continue to take to prepare for the reopening of schools. Dr. Mongan and our entire administrative team have poured over the data that we've received from our surveys and looking at the requests of parents. And she will lead us and guide us through that process of how we examine that information, the various options, and our recommendation for the reopening of schools tonight. So, Mr. Powey, would you please update us on what measures you've taken and continue to take to prepare our facilities for the return of students?
Thank you, Dr. Stern. Thank you, Board, for allowing me this opportunity to share with you the plans that we've put in place that we've worked very hard on for safe return for our staff and students. I first want to share the hard work that all of our buildings and grounds staff does every year and did this year to make sure that our schools were prepared, that our facilities were ready to accept the return of students, whether it was full or part-time. We strictly follow the recommendations of the CDC and the Illinois Department of Public Health. We utilize the guidance for cleaning and disinfecting as our protocol standard, and the CDC's readiness and planning tools have been intricate in how we plan and how we look at opening this school year in particular. A few things that we've done differently for this year is we've made some modifications to our air handling equipment. We added a disinfecting process to our cleaning coils on our rooftop units to just enhance the cleanliness of the air that's brought into the buildings. We've added additional filter changes to the systems and the univentilators in the classrooms as well as those air handling systems. We've upped that from typically 3 times a year to 5 this year. And then we also, through our control systems, we're upping the amount of outside air that we bring into our schools. Typically 9% is what's recommended for that air exchange. We're increasing that, dependent on the building, by another 3 to 5% to just increase the volume of air that's running through our classrooms. 9% is the recommended guideline. We've also added some additional disinfecting equipment, and I just kind of brought an example of the electrostatic gun that we're utilizing for disinfecting. We started utilizing these last school year, and it was a great process. We used it in response to a flu outbreak, to any kind of, a particular issue in a classroom, and we would bring in what we call a deep cleaning process, and that's what this gun included. So we've expanded the use of that. We'll be over 35 of these units in the district, plus a backpack sprayer. And the whole idea is to try to have every second shift custodian have one of these available in their disinfecting process nightly. As Dr. Stern mentioned, we've added an increased amount of PPE for our staff and having equipment available for teachers as needed, like masks, safety goggles, the sneeze guard partitions, movable partitions, just to name a few things. Gloves, things like that, as those stockpiles become available, we'll be able to get them. We work with multiple vendors on making sure we have access to all those supplies. Gloves and N95 masks are something we're requesting. We do have a small supply to start the school year, but those obviously are secured by the medical professionals, and we'll get them as they're available. We also added an alternate disinfecting product as we kind of looked at the needs and how we're going to have to function moving forward. We added an additional disinfecting product that has a shorter dwell time, and it's going to allow us, it's a food-grade sanitizing product that we'll be able to use in the classrooms and our food prep areas and cafeterias to allow us a quicker turnover for staff and students so we can make sure that they're disinfected and sanitized and available for the next group. Our typical product, the Alpha HP, has a 10-minute dwell time to disinfect properly, so that didn't allow us the time that was needed, so that's why we went to an alternate product. This product's a little more expensive and not as available, but I think it's going to be very helpful in transitioning in the ways we need to get students and staff back in the building. We've also purchased additional signage. We'll have a lot of signage communicating the necessity for masks, social distancing, hand washing. Hand washing is going to be a big focal point. We are going to have hand sanitizer available, which up until now has not been allowed by the ROE, alcohol-based sanitizers. We've not been allowed to use those. We have worked with the ROE to be able to make that available. We have a stockpile of that we were able to get access to, so we'll have hand sanitizer available. But again, we're going to really push the hand washing process and talk to students and staff about the necessity of hand washing. Signage will be, we're looking at directional signage for hallways and stairwells so traffic's not crossing paths. We're going to be marking off bus loading and unloading areas to keep social distancing as a reminder, especially for the younger kids. And then also staff training. We do staff training every year on a multitude of topics. Our staff in particular is fond of hands-on training. That's the way people in our line of work learn. So we've done a lot of hands-on trainings, but we brought in some vendors, and we actually just did the training today on specifically on the sanitation and disinfecting process and what the difference is in those two terms. The term disinfecting is the actual killing of germs. So that's the process where you need that dwell time. Sanitizing is strictly just the wiping down of a surface, not allowing that dwell time where you're killing a great percentage of the bacteria, but you're not killing everything. So that's where these guns come in handy. Our processes, there's been a lot of questions about what our processes will be and the difference between those Mondays and Tuesdays and Wednesdays. We will clean every night. Cleaning of our buildings is a priority and a necessity before we can sanitize. You have to clean the surfaces before you can sanitize them. So our Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday process will be cleaning, the full clean of our buildings as we normally do, and then the last part of our staff shift will be the sanitation process. So they'll utilize, we'll use overtime, we'll use extra hours to do that during the week, where they'll be going through their sections and highlighting definitely all the classrooms and all the student-occupied areas, common spaces, handrails, all the high-touch surfaces that will either use the BioSCU on a microfiber cloth or will be utilizing the disinfecting guns. So we will disinfect every night. The conversation about Wednesdays and Saturdays is that with that flow of students and the occupancy of the building, it's just challenges to give us the amount of time that I think we could use. So that's why we got into the conversation of utilizing those Wednesdays and Saturdays, where literally every single surface in the building on Wednesday and Saturday will be covered by disinfection. Not that they won't be during the week, but with traffic and people coming in and out of the building and everything, there's a little more challenge to that, but we are gonna do that to the best of our ability. But Wednesday and Saturday, we will focus staff hours on specific disinfecting of every single space. So that's kind of the difference in those 2 days. With teachers being in the building on those Wednesdays, that allows us less cleaning time, less time that we have to spend cleaning, so then that allows us more time to focus on disinfecting. We've provided these to transportation. We'll be utilizing these on the school bus on a regular basis. We worked with that staff on the sanitation and disinfecting process so they understand it. We've talked to the food service staff. All of our support staff is been made aware and shown how to utilize these things, so every area of our operations can be disinfected and maintained so it's a safe environment for staff and students. This particular chemical, the BioSCU, would be what we would provide and utilize in a classroom on a regular basis. It's a food grade sanitizer, so there's no necessity for PPE to utilize this. It has a shorter dwell time and a quicker kill time, so that's why we started demoing this in the driver's ed vehicles, and we'll be utilizing this in classrooms and food prep areas. That was a lot in a short few minutes. I believe I covered all of the questions.
We're not taking questions from the community. This is a board meeting, so board members, if you have questions. We already had public comment.
Yeah, and I have a couple of questions, actually.
Yes.
I mean, firstly, thank you for all the hard work you put in over the last number of weeks. I mean, I know it's been a task and a half, right? One of the concerns, obviously, I mean, and the concern for everybody sitting around here is maintaining safety for all, right? And that's going to involve not just an initial batch of work, but an ongoing amount of work, right? As you've outlined. And one of the biggest areas of concern is disinfecting objects between use, and particularly high touch points actually around the building during normal school day, particularly bathrooms. And whilst I hear what you said, there's always been an ongoing concern that perhaps the maintenance department hasn't had enough resource historically in terms of personnel. Do you have the people to do that?
Yes, what we've set up and put in place, again, utilizing these type of tools with the staff we have. Our day staff will be closing down washrooms on a regular basis to do a clean and disinfecting. Again, we got to clean before we disinfect, so isolating bathrooms, working on schedules with building administrators to maintain bathrooms on a regular basis. Our day staff will do that, and then they'll be walking the building utilizing this product with the microfiber and cloth, covering handrails. We're going to look at some options for holding doors open so we can alleviate traffic in those touch points. But our day staff our day staff understands the role that they play in this process of getting students and staff back in the building, and they're going to be a very active member of that process.
Feel comfortable you have not just enough people to actually do this on a daily basis, but do you have coverage in case of sickness or absence or?
We have what we call sub-staff, full-time staffed. We're still looking to hire 2 people for the night as our subs, but we do have a staff member during the day, and we utilize our other departments. We utilize our grounds department and maintenance department to help support during the day for when those needs
And
arise.
they're going to be trained up in the same
Correct.
process as everybody else.
All of our buildings and ground staff has been trained the same, yes.
On the question of the overnight cleaning, prior to staff and students coming into the buildings the following morning, I'm assuming you're doing an inspection, there's an inspection process? Is that correct?
Correct. My supervisors and myself will be doing random daily inspections. We don't have a documented inspection process at this time, but we will be doing regular inspections with our staff, working collaboratively with our staff. Our staff has been trained. Our staff knows what the expectations are, so we'll be following up on a random inspection process.
I mean, but your staff will be actually doing a full inspection in their own right.
Correct.
Do they have is there an active process of approval prior to the doors being opened every morning saying, yes, we're ready to go?
Not a documented approval process.
Would that be an issue if you put one in place?
It would be something we would have to look into how myself and my 2 supervisors could do that at each building.
No, I'm not
but
saying-
I
No, you misunderstand me. You have your staff in each building should be, obviously, they're making their own inspections, and obviously, they're the ones who are actually there at the time, so they know what they're doing, right?
Oh, okay.
They should be able to say to you, yes, we're good to go, the doors can be open.
So what's ironic is we utilize that process in the summer. So every one of our classrooms has an inspection sheet that's attached to the door. That could be something we could implement in the disinfecting process. Our subcommittee of facilities is made up of our buildings and grounds staff. We're working on what that task sheet per se is, because we work off of a task sheet, what that task sheet would look like in the disinfecting phase, so we could definitely look at something like that.
Personally, I feel that it's very important, the fact that there's a positive, yes, we're good to go, as opposed to nobody said anything, so therefore we assume it's going to be okay. And whether that's a checklist or whether that's whatever process that is, and with the people on the ground should have the authority to be able to say, no, we're not opening the doors, we're not ready. Right?
Absolutely.
Whether that's done at the end of the second shift, right? When the building's clean and closed for 5 hours or 6 hours, however long
Correct.
it is before
Yeah.
the person in the morning comes in and.
Somebody basically says, yes, we're good to go, we can unseal the door, and also be able to say, no, we're not good to go. We're
Yeah,
not going
there's
to
an
let anybody in.
issue-
Which I know is a
correct.
big decision, right?
Well, we would expect if that was the case that our staff would reach out to us and we'd have that conversation before we get to that.
I would just say it should be a positive process rather than just say nobody said
Yes,
anything, therefore we should
absolutely.
be okay, right?
Absolutely.
And again, I'm just asking you one more time. I mean, is there anything else that you don't have that you think you need? You mentioned gloves, you mentioned N95 masks that you think would be helpful. In terms of any other resource that you feel that you would need to actually do the job properly?
I think all of the hand soap, we stocked up on hand soap when all this happened, so we have a good supply of that. We're modifying paper towel dispensers to make those easier. I think all of the equipment that we need, we have available or we will have here before staff arrive.
Because I would actually say whether that's equipment, whether that's personnel, whether that's time, whether that's input, whether that's whatever it is. I'm sorry, but this actually is the most important part of what we're talking about right now.
We actually solicited the input of our staff knowing we're going to have some overtime, so we utilized that survey process to survey our staff, and almost 90% of our staff would be willing to work overtime if we could work with them to schedule it. So we've already broached that subject with them, that may be a necessity.
And you haven't had any pushback from the administration at all in terms of anything you've asked for so far?
No, we've worked all of our committees, all of our committee groups. We've been sharing information back and forth from the instruction committee to operations to facilities. All those committees have been working collaboratively on this plan.
Great, thank you.
Yep.
Appreciate it.
Any other questions?
Dr. Mongan, would you like to start covering the data that we've compiled?
Sure. First, I want to thank all the committee work that's being done, the collaboration we've had with both CEA President Chapman and CEA Vice President Kimberly Gravitt, as well as many teachers who have reached out to me, other grade levels that have reached out to me, music teachers have reached out to try to come up with some solutions to some of the more challenging elements. Those conversations have been very, very beneficial. As we looked at this, I first want to give you the raw data of the parent results that came out so you know what we were working from. Surprising to us, I think, maybe not surprising to parents, we had most of our parents select the 4-day option. We had 1,808 parents select the 4-day option. We had 1,324 parents select the AB schedule. 59 parents in our district chose to not attend Central 301 for next year. 649 parents selected remote semester 1. 156 parents selected a full year of remote, and then we had 459 undecided. And as we said last board meeting, we'd move the undecided up to the AB, but even with that, the 4-day option went out at 1,808, and the combined was 1,783. So it left us with quite a challenge and a dichotomy of, okay, this is what our parents want, what can we do, is this feasible? And so as we work the data, and I've given to the board kind of the data that I've crunched by building at elementary, because that's really our most expensive, because we have 4 of them, to see what that would look like. And if I gave all the parents what they requested, and if I granted that request, it would cost us over $2 million to be able to function just in staff alone. So unfortunately, that's not an option. There's just no way fiscally we could add another $2 million to our budget to find staff to actually teach. I think one of the teachers who spoke in open comment said that we were expecting teachers to do all of these at one time. We've never said that. We weren't quite sure what this was going to look like. When I ran the numbers AB, 4-day, remote, all requiring a teacher, all requiring a section, because it's very difficult for a teacher to be able to mix all that up together. So when I talk about the $2 million, I'm not mixing any of those. That's teachers for an AB schedule, teachers for a 4-day, and then teachers for the remote section only, which we're looking at right now. So that's not an option. So then I said, well, what do you think, Todd? What if we try 2 sections in each of the classrooms? So we said we give everybody 2 sections in the building for every grade level that we had enough for, and that still was at $1 million. So again, really not feasible. So then we looked at, well, can we at least give 1 section of 4-day? And there's a lot of conversation here because we recognize that students with special needs, we'd like to see them in the classroom. We'd like to see them into school each day, if possible. And then it came to the question of, well, part of the challenge of special ed is that you want to make sure they have their general ed peers as role models. So if we wanted to do that, you'd almost have to have a full section. But it's even more difficult than that because it would depend on the number of special ed students you had at each grade level, in each building, and then making sure you had enough general ed students to be with them to pair them up so it was least restrictive. We kind of put special ed off to the side and said, okay, well, how much is it for just 1 section of 4-day within each building? And that came to $625,000, which is a pretty large cost. That's just for elementary, for the 4 elementary, $625,000. So the last option we looked at was removing all 4-day options at the elementary to see what the cost of that was, and that's still a cost of $250,000. You might ask why. It's because we're trying to maintain class sizes that match the contractual requirements, splitting them in half to make sure that we don't exceed what we can put in a classroom to keep that 6-foot distancing that the guidelines are calling for. And so when you try to establish that, we're looking somewhere, depending on the size of the classroom, somewhere between 13 to 15 or 18. At the high school, we have some that can handle 17 or 18 when we looked at them. So when I diced these up, I really had to keep within the class sizes that we have in the contractual requirement that we have, as well as I try to maintain that lower class size so that each day, so that we could manage to keep those 6 feet distancing. That's why you're seeing the cost of $250. Additionally, the guidelines require that we offer remote learning to all parents. That's a requirement of the guidelines from the State Board of Education. And if we're going to do remote learning separately, having a separate teacher for those remote students, which I believe is best practice, then having a teacher try to mix all that together, it's going to come at a cost of $250,000 for the elementary school. Along with the data then, we looked at the middle schools. There was the opportunity to run one team of 4-dayers and then one team of AB at both middle schools. We could have probably managed to do that. The problem became the number of classrooms that we needed. And we don't have the number of classrooms that would be required to do that. Additionally, if we couldn't run it at the elementary school level, I didn't think it was probably equitable that we would run it at the middle school level. But I provided for you at least the cost of that. For a 4-day with the AB at Prairie Knolls would be another $390,500. And at Central Middle School, it'd be another $261,000. You can see we're back up to a fairly substantial, almost $1 million, if we kept just one section at the elementary plus these, a little over $1 million. ABs are pretty neutral. We were actually, unfortunately, we would probably reduce the minutes in ELA and math. Currently, they do 66. Social and science do 44. And we would be moving everybody to a little under, close to 40, 41, including math and ELA to pick up additional sections, which would leave us with some teachers who could then absorb the remote-only kids. So some could teach their content. Part of the challenge at middle school and high school is that they're content specific. Their licensures don't cover the whole span. They're very specific to math or to ELA or to social studies or to science. So we have to make sure that we have enough content teachers to cover the teacher or the students that we would need them to cover. So at the middle school level, we maybe have to have teachers do both AB, a section of AB or 2, and maybe a section or 2 of remote. It just depends on how it would break down by schedule. At the high school level, in talking to Kim, she's able to get all of the students rescheduled in what their elective courses were in an AB, maintain class sizes, and where they need to be, as long as we may have to shift some teachers from one classroom they're used to a classroom that could absorb a larger size. We're trying to make sure we have one classroom to every teacher. I'm not sure yet if we can get there. We'll have to report that out. She's kind of checking that out with Carrie McCaslin. Our recommendation is for all districts to go AB only and remote and drop 4-day at this point in time. We just do not believe it's feasible for the district to do that.
And then special populations?
But for special education, special populations, the ALAP program, Life Skills, LEAD, STAR, those are our self-contained independent classes. We would want to have them come in all 4 days. Then there's another population out there that have a lot of related services that go with their academics. So a student might be very high need. They may get math or reading, they may get writing, they may get speech, they may get OT-PT, they may get social work services. So a lot of their day might be pull-out related services. So if we only gave them 2 days, a lot of that might be related services. So we looked at our population of special education students who had severe needs or a lot of related services, and we have about 16 students that we would want to pull in as 4-day as well, based on having high needs in those categories. And the reason we took 16, or we took that route instead of all special ed, is there's no way we could fill all of the classrooms based on where they're all sitting. And some kids are pretty much either collab, you know, they're just getting ready to exit special education. They're doing well in a general education classroom. They may do good in a remote setting. And so we did not pick up those students. And Mike and Michelle are the ones that selected those students based on that criteria.
So based on our analysis, based on what we looked was attainable, achievable, sustainable, as Dr. Mongan said, we're recommending the AB schedule for all levels with an alpha split. So AK in one group, L through Z in the other, with one group attending on Mondays and Thursdays, and the other group attending on Tuesdays and Fridays.
And middle school, high school, changing to a start of 7:30 to 2, middle school be 2:08, just because of transportation to pick up kids. Elementary being from 9 to 3:30 for their time frame. Transportation can accommodate all those. I will say, though, in the midst of all of this, and since the last board meeting to now, there's been some pretty creative solutions, and I think you heard a parent mention that she wished we could do something with K-1. And one of the solutions that we've talked to Kira and Dave about is maybe kindergarten being half day, you know, and coming in, so A to K would come in the morning, L to Z would come in the afternoon, and they'd be there all, you know, so they would be there every day and have the experience at the elementary. And whether we can work that or not. So then when Kira and Dave were working with us again, they said, well, hey, could we maybe think about that for K-5? You know, could it be an option that early childhood through 5th grade could do something like half day for AK, half day for LZ? So those are some ideas we're still having. I don't know what the board's opinion of that would be or what you think from a parent's perspective. I know it could be daycare, larger daycare issues than the 2 days, because it's half day every day. But those are some things that we've been kind of batting around as we're trying to work on solutions and meeting the needs of some of our younger students who are learning literacy and numeracy and some of those skills that are really, really important as they progress into the education system.
Those are very valid points, but one question I had is how are we gonna keep the classrooms clean between the shift of kids?
There's an hour and a half.
Okay.
So if you did a 9:30 to, or 9 to 11:30, 11:30 to 1 would be a break. 1 to 3:30 would be the second shift. And talking to transportation, because that's first thing, right? Can we get the buses cleaned? They felt they needed an hour and a half to pick up, transport, and clean buses. The maintenance would come through with their guns, and we'd work on a schedule with each teacher so that when they went in, it would have that dwell time that they would need. Teachers will have the products. One of the things, you know, Kira I talked about, some kindergarten teachers talked about is some of them will wipe off products that they know, like they're working on blocks. Mm-hmm. They would wipe their blocks themselves, take care of some of that stuff. Kira knows what she'd need for the next period. She'd take care of those things. But the primary classroom stuff, we'd come through with the guns or the wipe down to do the kill.
Okay.
In the time frame for that hour. We'd work a schedule up.
Also, he sees different hours,
8:30, right? And I talked to Dan how long, you know, I said to Dan, well, how long would it take, Dan, to go in there? Because I was thinking 10 minutes. He said, no, literally it would take, you know, them to go in and spray a minute, 2 minutes, and then it needs that dwell time of 10 minutes. So a teacher would need to be out of the classroom when they're doing it. So you can work on the lunch or whatever they need to do to kind of rotate those teachers out while that's dwelling and drying to get those cleaned.
So two things that stand out for me from just a curriculum standpoint. So, you know, this idea of having, you know, our teachers with teachers, and this is just our feedback from the teachers, you know, different 3-5, right, than K2 especially. So, you know, would they teach the same content afternoon and morning?
Yes.
And then the same kids would have their reversed, you know, like online, where sometimes math might be remote and then math might be in person. Reading might be remote, and reading might be in person. And how do we prioritize that?
Well, one of the things we're thinking is that we would do specials as remote. So the 2.5 hours would be all core maybe. The specials would be remote, so the PE, art, and music would, so if a morning class is coming in for the core instruction, in the afternoon, they would do their specials. The PM class would do their specials in the morning, and then they would do their core in the afternoon when they come in. So math, ELA, social studies, and science would be handled in that 2.5 hours that they're there. Part of the challenge is 2.5 hours. Part of that's loading a bus, unloading a bus, taking bathroom breaks, washing hands, you know, some of those things. So you're probably down to maybe 2 hours of instruction, but it's still direct instruction with the classroom teacher.
And so you had I think in the 2 weeks ago, I think you had a rough schedule for 9 to 3, I think it was roughly.
Yep.
6 hours on the clock, if you
Yep.
will. And so in looking back at that, you know, or kind of the way that some of our existing teams do it, obviously I know HBT, and so thinking about how many minutes of our 6 hours and 25 minutes at the elementary level you take out lunch, recess, specials, roughly. Are we looking at 3 hours of existing core science,
1,
math,
2.5,
reading, social
3.
studies?
So you're looking at an hour and a half of ELA, 60 minutes of math, and 30 minutes of social studies science, but they alternate those, so it's 3 hours a day roughly
Okay.
of direct
So
instruction.
we're losing a good percentage of that, but I would argue the same way, right? That being in person, especially for our littles, is a good option. What about, I mean, again, we get 5th graders who, you know, from my perspective, you know, very different than our kindergartners who need movement breaks in there, but can we expect 4th and 5th graders to have 1 5-minute break if they're only there for 2 hours and 15 minutes? I would argue yes, that developmentally they would have the capacity to do that with moving around the classroom, be very
Right.
clearly. And so, you know, how do we kind of flex that? One thing in talking to Dr. Stern last week was, you know, provided this is something we're able to make happen as safely as possible and as effectively as possible, you know, do we take advantage of neighboring districts? So if we have, for instance, District 300 and they have buses, and is that a cost that we're willing to take on and say, hey, can we get some extra buses? Does that help get more classroom time? If we don't have to spend all this time loading and unloading buses, if we have more buses so the routes aren't as long and we can cut down, I don't know. But
Well, we actually talked about this. I think the challenge there is that most of the districts are saying Q1. So they're not gonna give us buses for a whole semester, right? So they're still depending on those buses at some point.
Right.
So to lock those into us, probably not gonna happen.
Well, yeah.
Yeah, it's probably not feasible. So that's why we're kind of locked into busing. The other challenge we have at Central is, 85% of our students are bused. We're the only district that has that, maybe Canelan, I don't know what their number is, but we're very, very dependent on transportation to assist us in that.
Yeah.
So I have a question, but since we're talking about this right now, I'll just make a comment. So I've heard from somebody who works and works with teachers in other schools, not in our district, but another district, but they said that in the kindergarten first, lower grades, the teachers really would like to have those, at least in this neighboring district, would like to have their students in class for those reasons, at least to start the school year, because of building relationships and things like that. So I certainly would be open to listening to that. My other question is if money and district or classroom space wasn't available, would we even be able to find teachers? You're talking about like a ton of extra staff people.
The 2 million one, yeah.
I mean, this late in the year and even to find.
Elementary, yes. Middle school and high school gets a little bit more difficult when you're looking specifically at content. Sciences are very hard, chemistry, physics, some of those. Elementary, though, generally speaking, yeah, we can usually find elementary teachers.
And that's with AB only with remote. If we did that, elementary is the only space we would need teachers according to this
That's correct.
data here.
Correct.
Yes, we would need
We
5
need
teachers.
5 additional staff.
Across all 4 buildings.
I was able to put in 4 teachers in the CARES grant, so we were able to cover 4 teachers through the CARES grant for the year.
Okay.
I had a comment regarding the half-day thing. Go 2 hours of teaching, that's 10 hours a week. They had 2 days. I think it's actually a little more, it would seem. And then the other thing for the community, there's been a lot of outcry on daycare. So we did the alpha split. But now if you have 5 days a week with a half day, I think that's a lot more difficult to find childcare for a half day compared to 3 full days or 2 full days or something like that. And then if the older sibling is going to school, Thursday, Friday, then the half day, when normally they would be together, at remote, that's gone.
Yep,
So
that's
it's-
correct. Right, daycare is definitely, with the half-day, is definitely one of the issues with that in terms of parents. But I think academically, I think the argument that I heard from the kindergarten teachers, because they're the ones I spoke to mostly about this was kind of their idea at first, was they felt that if they could have them as a set time, not being interrupted with encores or specials, which they are in the full day. Remember that part of that time, they're being pulled for specials, they're going to lunch, they're doing all these. We're not talking about serving lunch for these kiddos either. We're talking about sending them home, no lunch being served at school in the 2.5. So you're not giving up that time that you might do in that longer day. They also felt for that age, it was much more appropriate for the wearing of masks, not to have them all day, a shorter period of time. But they felt that they could get more covered, because I asked the same question to them, but they really felt they'd get more covered in that set amount of time, uninterrupted, than what they could do in the course of what they would have for a full day.
I could see it for kindergarten more so.
The older elementary.
We used to do half-day kindergarten anyway.
Yeah, we did. And they said they hated to go back to even talk about that, because they fought so bad to get full day. I said, we're not looking to move it, so.
So when do you anticipate, if there are still logistical things to figure out about this, whether that's the classrooms, I know you guys worked diligently over the weekend, and again with these two in the back, with CA, of course, to figure out like what we need. or getting feedback. Obviously, nothing's gonna be unanimous. You know, what did we look at? We have another board meeting in 2 weeks or 3 weeks?
Yeah,
2
we don't
weeks.
have time, though. I mean, our recommendation tonight
But we have a recommendation.
is to
for
go,
AB.
It's already set. I just
is to
wanted-
go A, B, although, you know, we have a lot of logistics we'd have to work out on the other one with both the union, making sure teachers were on board, you know, all of those elements. So right now, as we sit, so people can make a plan, our recommendation would be to go AB, remote learning, special education for those 16 students outside of the program, special education students, so we can service the ones that are the highest need. And I think then as we look at other parents that maybe, you know, where Mike and Michelle can work with those other parents that maybe feel like they didn't make the cut for whatever reason, and see what they come up with. We're kind of trying to develop a specific procedure for that.
Yeah, that was something I was gonna mention earlier. I would just assume that we're gonna have parents who would feel like their kids would not only benefit, but require based on that, and if, you know.
I think if I would like to see early childhood in kindergarten come every day, if it was you know, that, than everybody else, AB, but I don't know that we can get the transportation for kindergarten, and we would need to definitely work with CEA to see if that was doable.
So we've given our recommendation, which is the either AB schedule, elementary, middle school, and high school, or full remote for the parents that want it. Those are really the two options that we're moving forward at this time.
Can we just clarify this question of, before we even talk about anybody coming back, right? Do we have the resources in place to make sure, and I keep banging on about this, but for example, do we have the nursing staff in place that we need?
We have a nurse in every building, yes.
Is that sufficient?
Yes.
Okay.
We also have an administrative assistant, where we are putting in a secondary administrative assistant, temporary, to assist in some of the paperwork, to help reduce the workload for both our secretarial staff and nursing staff.
And will that person be trained in terms of what to do in case of?
Yes.
Okay. And the other big question that I keep hearing a lot is, what happens when there is a student found with the COVID virus? What is the process?
We
How does
follow the
that work?
CDC and IDPH guidelines, which are very kind of delineated. They're also in the book that we have, and we have to update that. It's in the opening plan.
Okay.
On what the guidelines are there. They did change it. They actually reduced the time.
They actually reduced the
CDC went
time
from
to be
72
out.
hours to 24 hours. So
Right.
their time frame has reduced in terms of how long somebody needs to be out of the school.
Okay.
And their last guidelines. So we have to update the opening plan with those new guidelines.
Under what circumstances would be required to close?
There is no specific percentage. Kane County will not give us one. IDPH and CDC will not give you one. It's really
work on-
monitoring what's going on. It's up to a local decision.
So what do we
So
say?
you work with the Kane County Health Department on those individual outbreaks,
Right.
and then you follow the guidance that is recommended.
But if they're not giving us guidance?
No, it's gonna be based on situations.
Oh, I see what you mean, right, okay.
That situation.
They will consult essentially
Yes.
on a given circumstance.
Right.
or set of
Okay.
circumstances.
Correct, it's situational based on the circumstances of that case, of that outbreak.
Okay, that makes sense, because I think that's one of the areas of concern, obviously, for parents and staff and everybody, right? What happens when?
It's in the guidelines, what CDC has told us. They did make it much looser, which we will update, but we'll be following the guidelines there.
Okay.
Is there any recommendation anywhere in the United States from health departments that school districts do temperature checks of students or staff?
The guidelines require us we get pre-certification, so we need to require every parent. It would take you all, imagine putting 40,000 kids through a thermometer check, and how long that would take before they get on a school bus. Our concern is to make sure that our bus drivers are safe as well. So we want to make sure that we're entering kids on our school bus, with 85% of our kids riding a school bus, getting entered onto a school bus after parents have pre-certified them, that they actually have no temperature and don't have any of the COVID symptoms.
Do we feel like that's a reasonable expectation to put on bus drivers?
It's a lanyard with a plastic coating they should be able to see the check marks very easily. One quick look, that came out of the Operations Committee.
Yep.
Recommendation.
Unloading of the school bus also, because if anybody's at school, when you unload or get on, it is a mass crowd.
We're using
getting off the bus. So-
multiple entry points now. So
Okay.
bus loading will be in multiple locations in each of the buildings.
Okay.
And then we'll have 6-foot markers for students to walk on.
We'll have signage to
exiting.
control flow in
We'll
the
be exiting
hallways.
one bus at a time.
A bus, okay, so it's gonna be more of a.
One bus at a time.
Okay, that was my question.
Well, it won't be a mass unload anymore.
Okay.
Yep.
Perfect.
And
That's why I say it's gonna take a little bit more time to load and
Yeah,
unload buses,
yeah.
for sure.
How much time have you allocated for that extra time?
We don't know. We're gonna find out, but we don't, I mean, until we do it, and each building will be different, we don't know what that will be.
Any guess? I'm guessing, because, you know, if the kids have to go, what, 6 feet off, it could take 20 minutes for them to exit the bus?
Well,
And
first of all, we know kids are gonna have masks on in the buses, and we know they're not gonna take 6 feet off in a school bus. I mean, let's be real, right? They're gonna load up and they're gonna come off the school bus. We're gonna try to walk them in and train them to go 6 feet, but they're on a school bus together. They're gonna, we know how students are. We're gonna do our best to teach students how to do that, but that's gonna take some training.
Faster.
And it
Well,
will get
no,
faster.
I understand that, but, you know, that's, logistically, it's gonna be a nightmare for a while.
Yes.
And I understand that, and that's gonna be a stack up, and what kind of training, and can you do that training before school starts? Send out videos or anything like that?
Oh,
on
we
how
could
to?
have our drivers work on some videos and those
Can I
types of
play a big
things.
fifth grader?
Oh, man.
You wanna be a big fifth grader?
Happy to be a big fifth grader.
I'll let Pam Porter know that.
I want to see
Very
that
good.
video.
Yeah, we could work on that.
Has there also been discussion about, I'm assuming as a parent, there will be more parents dropping off and picking up until, I know that's something I'm thinking and planning on, just the, you know, is that something that's being discussed too? Because I'm even thinking traffic flow, because I know like PK gets crazy.
And there's nowhere for
Sometimes-
PK to go. It's the way
Yes.
it was built.
Yes.
That's
but the
why you
other
kind of
schools-
wave way around.
Is it something that's been, I know you have so much to talk about.
PK
with the
is
districts.
problematic, CT is problematic, for sure. Those are our two issues when they were built. You know, they
Okay.
were not built in a way that manages a large traffic flow. Primarily because we felt that most kids would walk at Prairie Knolls, and we really have much more parents dropping off kids at Prairie Knolls Middle School than we would have anticipated. In terms of, we know that those will be separate entries in the buses, so buses will be different locations, the parents will be at a different location.
Okay.
But the managing of PKMS, it doesn't matter what year it is.
Not even just
Yeah.
PK, all the schools in general, because I just think there's gonna be, at least at the beginning, I think people will probably do more.
Maybe
I'm
our
just
parent,
wondering if you guys,
our
if
parent survey
buildings are
said no.
discussing it.
Our parent survey said they would send their kids on buses, so
Okay.
I don't know, maybe
Yeah.
that's
There
different
didn't
than
seem
what
to
they
be a
should.
substantive difference from
No.
what we were already seeing at the building level.
Not according to the survey, but again, when it comes closer, you know,
And HPT would be a non-issue because we'd have half the high schoolers there anyway, so we'd have that front lot that we could pull teachers to and use the other lot to
Right.
snake around the exit that they already go out of now.
it will take longer for sure, in all areas. Loading of buses, unloading of buses, it's gonna take more people to supervise. I know the middle school has worked a schedule out for teachers to supervise and some of those things to make sure that we're able to get those kids in and out safely.
The recommendation obviously is that is AB schedule for everybody other than those and then other those who go remote, basically, right? Special ed,
Special ed, all of our programs, LEADS, ALAP, STAR, those are the programs that are self-contained kids in a specialized program. Those kids will come to school every day.
okay,
And then we have about
4
six.
days or 5?
They'll come 4 days.
4 days.
Yeah.
okay,
And then our students that have severe needs with a lot of related services, we have about
Multiple
16 of those
services.
students.
that'll also be 4
About
days,
16 of the students will be coming also 4 days.
okay.
And those parents will be reached out to by Michelle and Mike.
And you're looking to make a decision on that when?
Which one?
On the whole plan, as it stands right now?
They want our
Today?
guidance.
That's our recommendation.
Okay, and then when will
The
that?
only variance I would like to consider, if we can get it worked out with CEA and ourselves, and we can come to some kind of, and the teachers, it would be to allow early childhood and kindergarten specifically, the opportunity to come in at half days, 4 days a week.
Okay,
Because there is not a mandated time frame by the government for either one of those populations. Kindergarten's really a choice, right? You don't have to come to school to 7 by law. So I think there's some opportunities there that we could take in on, especially for early literacy and early numeracy for that population. I would like some leeway that I could adapt those 2 grade levels if possible.
so I mean, we all know this stuff, people need certainty in terms of their own planning, we
Yes.
know that, right?
Yes.
When are we looking to review this situation?
We're currently in talks. We were in talks all weekend.
But once the decision's taken, when are we then making a further decision? At the end of the year, 1st of January?
Oh, no,
Or for this
we
school
believe
year,
this
or
stays
what?
for the entire school year. We don't know where we're going. We have to plan on staffing. We're gonna make adaptations to people who are remote only that wanna come back at semester, which would increase class sizes, which could be a cost to us to increase that. We recognize that. But overall, we would like to stay with this plan for an entire year.
So we're making a decision for the year as a whole. Okay.
I said 2 weeks ago, I'm glad we got the extra 2.5 weeks to start this year, but I also, people need to know
Yeah.
what to plan for. And so we know 40% of people aren't gonna like whatever it is that we recommend and certainly, put our backing to, but I think that having a decision is better than no decision. I appreciate the creativity that kind of came in at the end here with the half, I'll be honest, I would love it if my kids could have 2.5 hours a day at school, but I agree with Jeff on this one, that logistical nightmare for parents that are already stressed about what is gonna happen for my kids when they're home all day. If it was 5 half days, that would be, I think, even more challenging and cumbersome, quite frankly. And so I think, maybe we can still do some creative things with specials for our kids that are in there 2 days a week, and how can we have more classroom learning time with our I don't know, I know we have our minutes there, but how do we get creative with that?
Yeah, the guidance requires that students get 5 hours of seat time.
Right.
Now, that 5 hours of seat time includes specials, but it still would require some activities to be sent home from their 2.5 hours of instruction to be done at home, to get that 5 hours required.
And if we do AB with remote, would the in-person kids be on our exact same time schedule as last year? Or would there be noticeable tweaks, 10-minute tweaks to a start and an end of a school day?
For remote only, for
No,
remote?
for our kids when they're at the buildings. I mean, is that the same as last school year?
No, middle school and high school would go 7:30 to around 2:08, and then our elementary would go 9 to 3:30, so
That's what
fairly
we saw
close,
last
about 10-minute difference.
Yeah, okay.
They get out about 10 minutes earlier. And much earlier at the middle school, but they also start later. They start at 8:12.
And they're sharing, right? Are they sharing transportation?
They'll be that's why we need to do it, in order to get the buses turned around to get the middle, the elementary. Yep.
On the question of self-certification, right, and we raised this at the last meeting, we're relying on parents basically to be very honest about the whole process, right? Do we need to change any of the handbooks to?
Yes, we're working on that right now. That'll come forward in 2 weeks. Currently, we are looking at every handbook and updating everything we need, as well as board policy will be coming forward. And that'll be happening at the next board meeting.
And we're clear of the fact that should there be sort of deliberate mistakes being made by the parents, should I say, that that child will get full remote because they can't be trusted, or a period of that?
In the handbook, underneath discipline, so if a child isn't wearing their mask, for example.
Right.
Now, if we have medical reasons why a child can't wear a mask, they have autism, sensory issues, some of those things, that'll be in medical documentation, and we'll work with those students in some other means. Otherwise, students who can wear masks and do not wear them, they'll be disciplined appropriately, and we will warn them the first time, call parents. Second time, they'll come down to the office, we'll call parents to have them picked up, and
Right.
the third time, they will be home permanently for remote only.
Okay. And the same if they're self-certifying incorrectly?
I don't know how you'd prove that. That's a tougher one. I'm not sure you could, short of them not having a temperature, and
Yeah, no,
there would be no way to discipline for.
It's a tough one, but.
I don't know that we could honestly give an honest referral on that one.
What about a possibility of a spot check? Purchasing an infrared thermometer and,
Well, we have the-
random children that come in the door.
We have the ability that if someone's displaying any type of symptoms, or you suspect that they may be displaying a symptom, even though they did the self-certification, maybe something starts to occur during the day.
Yeah.
We have all of the equipment there to do a symptom check, temperature check, and if need be, isolate with appropriate protective equipment.
But again, I think it's just worth stressing the fact that this whole system only works if everybody actually goes
Absolutely.
into it with good faith.
Yeah.
And if they don't, then realistically, we're just putting everybody's health at risk.
And one of the reasons we chose to do pre-certification the way we chose to, and we're one of the only districts that's requiring, and I know, Eric said it could be kind of laborious, right, for a parent, but we want them to think every morning that they're signing off that their kid is healthy. And they have to fill that form out every single morning and sign their name on purpose. We want them thinking every single day and making a decision that my child is healthy enough to go to school. Same thing with our teachers, every one of us included. We will be pre-certifying every morning that we're healthy enough to come to school.
Would that be on our building administrators, I'm assuming, to track?
The teachers will be filling out a form every morning before they enter the door,
Okay.
and principals will be tracking that. Our district office people will be tracking every day. And then students, one of the reasons we wanted that other person for administrative, we'll have them, taking them, collecting them once they come off the bus, and then we'll be tracking every student to make sure we have pre-certification on every
And
single student.
This has been a current expectation for administrators that have worked all summer long in district office, that has been opened nonstop since the beginning of this pandemic. We self-check and self-certify every day. So it's just a continuation of that for all levels.
Yeah, good point. Thanks for the clarification.
I think things have changed society-wise too, that if you're not feeling well,
Stay home.
it's okay to stay home now.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
where before it was like, you're fine, just go to school.
And I think
Go
it's
to
a-
work.
yeah.
But I mean, now if the child doesn't feel well, they can stay home and jump into that remote learning for that class, not the other one, but, and there's an option, I think, that's easier. So hopefully, all we can do is have faith in our parents and, kids and.
Yeah, and I think it's important for parents to know that we're still gonna educate your child. If they're asymptomatic, or they just aren't feeling well, leave them home. Let them go on to the remote, let the teacher know they're absent, but they're not missing class. They're gonna check in on that remote piece, right? So they're still gonna learn from home. Same thing for staff. If staff is ill, call in, let us know. One of the guidances that we're waiting for is we believe in the past you could not leave a parapro supervise a students without having line of sight. There is guidance we hear that's coming out that's going to allow you to let a parapro in a classroom to monitor students while a teacher is teaching remotely. So if a teacher's sick, they don't feel 100%, but they don't want to take a sick day, they want to teach from home because they feel they're good enough to teach remotely. From home, we can try to figure out if we can work on those types of things. Those are some things we still have to kind of work out, and okay, what's going to happen with this, or how does this look? Those are things we still have to talk about with both CEA, BEST, all of those groups as well. But I think there's some solutions to that. We really want them to stay home. I don't want them to be afraid that they have to come because they don't want whatever, right? So we want to be thinking creatively about those solutions as well.
So, yeah, I think your recommendation stands unless anyone has any.
I think that's the best of a lot of not great options based on our limitations with size, especially with our buildings the way they are right now. And I support that option at this time.
As do I.
I do too.
Good.
Doesn't matter,
We're just gonna throw his
Well, I
iPad
definitely
across
think
the
there
room.
needs to be some time spent on instruction for the children before they get to school on mask usage and how to use a mask. I mean, looking around the room, your nose and mouth are supposed to be covered by your mask.
There's a requirement, we do GCN modules, and in the GCN module, there's actually a requirement that they have to watch one on COVID-19. It's a new requirement, so every staff member will be viewing the COVID-19. Within the first week of school, first day probably, we'll be talking to kids as well about some of those things. That's another requirement that we have to do, is to make sure that we're educating students on a proper hand washing, proper way to wear a mask, those types of elements. So we'll be kind of showing them that in every building, wherever the stations are at or located. We're gonna need to walk them and show them in a classroom somehow, so that they know where they need to go, if they need to put hand sanitizer on, where they can find it, those kinds of elements as well. Every building has its own issues. Elementary is being self-contained, middle school is staying in homerooms. Teachers are moving, but they're still gonna move somewhat in terms of specials. So when they're going to their encore class for PE, because we wanna get them outside as much as possible, or art, or music, or foreign language. We still want them to experience those things in middle school as well. So they will be going to those classrooms, so they need to know where they need to hand sanitizer going in and out. We call it foam in, foam out. They're not really foam machines, but they need to sanitize in and out. And it's just training them on all of those protocols. But that's all part of the new way of educating our students.
And there's gotta be a lot of that content that's already been curated anyway by the
Yep.
CDC
Oh, yeah.
and by other things. We surely can,
Yep.
spend some time finding what we think are the best for our
Yep.
students.
I have some
The
entertaining
CDC's
company
already-
videos.
CDC's already produced training videos for like hand washing, use of masks, things like that.
And I know I'm the only one who's taking my kid outside of the house, but I teach them to use a mask and use sanitizer when they go out too, so.
Yeah.
My kids remind me if I forget getting out of the car.
There you go.
Got Maeve always correcting me. She's ready to go.
We haven't addressed the question of after-school and athletics programs.
So athletics have been shut down by IHSA and IESA with the exception of cross-country, kin run,
Okay.
and as well as golf for the high school.
Tennis.
So, and tennis. So middle school will run cross-country, high school can run the other three. Everything else has been pushed off. I'm not quite sure. They said they'd push off every other sport till later. I don't know if they're gonna play football in the snow. I'm not quite sure. We'll wait to see what IHSA has to say with that. We'll see what those guidelines are.
The building.
In terms of activities, I think, again, that's a conversation we need to have with CA leadership to figure out what that's gonna look like, and we haven't gotten that far yet. For things like, Scholastic Bowl, or, some of those other elements. I mean, obviously, we're not gonna do homecoming floats this year, because there won't be a homecoming float, or dances. So some of those things we have to still talk about.
I mean, and do we have a time frame, expectation of time frame to actually be making decisions like that?
We're working with CA consistently, so as we continue to work with that and we get, somewhere an agreement, then we'll push information out.
How about music and band? Is that under the same guidelines?
Music and band, so our music teachers at elementary school have been very, very creative. So they have a lot of ideas that I think are pretty creative. Again, it'll depend on how we're gonna do things there and what that's gonna look like for pushing in. Instead of them actually singing, we've purchased some things that like rattle, the kind of shakers, if you will, like an egg shaker kind of thing to teach them beat and those kinds of things. So they had some pretty creative things for kids to use and still enjoy music. And so I think they've got a whole spreadsheet of stuff. They've got ideas of speakers to go outside, so they can take the kids outside and still do the music with some speakers that are all fairly inexpensive. So we'll be looking to purchase some of those supplies to get them up and going. The middle school, again, has been working as well. They have some pretty creative solutions. So I've got quite a few spreadsheets, and I know the principals have been talking to the middle school music people more than I have. I've been dealing much more with the elementary. In the high school, of course, we know we lost Jeff Nesseth, which is a huge loss to our district, severe loss to our district for chorus. Many kids have been touched by him, dramatic, I can't even talk about how many kids he's touched in his lifetime here, in his tenure within our district. So that position we're gonna need to fill. And so it's really Jeff Nesseth, and I've talked more to the pianist, the keyboard. She sent me some statistics and some research and some studies that have been out there, which have been pretty interesting. I know that marching band is a staple in our community. So we just need to be talking to Jim to see what his solutions are and ideas. One of the things he sent us, which I told Carrie to get a price on, was they're like masks for musical instruments, kinda. They kind of wrap around the bottom of a trombone, so for spit. And then they said to use puppy pads to drop the spit in, when you empty out the spit things. So I thought those are some really creative solutions that maybe we could
Quite the
use.
visual you made for everybody at home.
We could use that in our science class to do some petri dishes, and we could bring it full circle, people.
You could do testing.
But we do feel confident. I think that there's community members, I think, that are worried, about the future of the fine arts due to COVID, and we're committed to continuing the fine arts in a safe and effective way, and we'll work collaboratively with the teachers to establish how we can best accommodate that.
Well, as somebody who, when I was here for Jeff's first year in 1996, and the first year we had chorale. It was the first year that we had a kind of a top-tier choir. It was extremely important to me while I was here, and theater was extremely important to me while I was here, and I was in all the shows when I was here, and hopefully I hope the community, there's people that care about it, and I was extremely involved in that. It was a really important part of my formative years at the high school in particular, so it is not forgotten. We just, sounds like, have to be really creative, I think.
Yep.
So.
Yep. They're pretty creative. That crew is very, very creative. They come up with solutions. They're very solution-oriented, so I'm sure we'll get to a good solution there.
So we're gonna move forward then with the AB schedule, and the other plans for the other groups that we laid out.
Great.
Yep.
Excellent.
Are we doing- Is there anything else? Sorry. A motion and second to adjourn into executive session.
So moved.
Second. Yes.
Yes.
Yes?
Yes.
Yes.
Aye.
Yes,
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks so much.
thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, yeah, they might want.
It's almost 2 hours.
Well, they have them electronically.
We didn't have a regular meeting.